So we're going to have a 18 lap race with, I believe, starting grid of where the lap 16 was, I think, potentially. And if that is the case, then of course, well, I think all penalties are at the moment removed, so therefore, with the race restarted. So just be, as I said, 18 laps. Not sure whether it's going to be wet or dry. So we'll have to see what the weather is going to do for this second part of the race. Did say would be back as soon as what you call it, technical issues were sorted, and we are. So sorry about those technical issues in the first part, but of course, well, welcome to EA. Can't wait for F1 2024 bugs. Hopefully they'll be as good, if not better. You know, that's what I'm looking forward to in F1 2024. Only, what is it, a week now until the game is released if you get in the Champions Edition. If you're like me, I'm probably not going to get that edition, even though I'm thinking maybe about getting EA Play, which of course would, in theory, allow me to have a subscription, therefore I can play more games on EA. I'm not sure though. Otherwise, I'll probably just get the normal standard edition of the game. But yeah, certainly for the first time, I think it'll be in 6 years. I'm not going to get the Champions Edition. Which is probably mainly due to how bad F1 2023 and 2022 was. But enough talking about that. Time to get back to the racing then. Action here. And once again, it is lights out and away we go in ERL for then what is round number 11, the penultimate round of the championship season in these intermediate conditions. Then Ralphie makes a good start from pole. Then it's Man's Not Bob. Neil in third. Fourth is Appledorm, who right now almost took out has Jay Nagel, who had a bit of a moment, but manages both of them to survive. And that is Tom going down the inside, who loses, I think, a bit of front wing. Everyone's off the track ever so slightly. But in the end, Tom manages to survive, but Charlie Harris up into 12th, now trying to go down the inside of Brian for what will be 11th. Then here, as I say, if Appledorn wants to keep his championship alive, needs to finish 9th. If obviously Charlie Harris wants to keep his championship alive, needs to finish then inside the top 10. So those are the requirements in terms of obviously Alpine. Well, they not need to be outscored by 20 points. But in a way, I'm not going to do the championship maths, I don't think, for the constructors a little bit. No offence, because I think that one might be a little bit too complex to work out who's scoring what and why. But for the drivers, championship, I will try to work it out the best as I can in terms of whether or not the championship stays alive. Right now, though, Man's Not Bob would jump up into 4th in the championship standings ahead of Tom. Then today, that would see him move up into 4th quite nicely, which I'm sure he'd be pretty pleased to hear that at the moment. And, well, with only an 18-lap race, I don't know whether these Inters can go to the end of this race here. Because I'm not really sure what the weather is going to be for the entire race, whether or not it's preset to just intermediate conditions, and whether or not the Inters can obviously last 18 laps, you know, whether or not anyone can do that. I mean, obviously, if they were on hards, I reckon they could go all the way to the end, potentially, but even then I'm not sure, actually, because in theory, considering the race is shorter, therefore, well, my thinking or logical thinking is, in theory, because the race is shorter, therefore you don't need to make any stops, if that makes sense. But at the same time, in theory, the tyre wear should be higher and should be greater if you're doing a shorter race, if that makes sense. So I'm not entirely sure whether or not we will see any pit stops in this race or not, or whether it's just going to be a straight fight between everyone to the end of the race in terms of where things go. So Ralphie then currently leads. Man's Not Bob second. Third is Neil. Then fourth is Appledorm, who hasn't had the cleanest of races, but I don't think anyone has, if I'm being brutally honest so far. But so far in this race, actually, he's doing a little bit better. He building out a little bit of a gap over the AlphaTauri driver behind him, and past Jane Eagle and FCS and Shade of the Ferrari man in 6th. M in 7th. Lucky Egg 8th. Shipboys is a legend is in 9th. Then Morgan is in 10th. Then Mafasa is 11th, followed by Brian in 12th. And then a little bit further back is obviously Charlie Harris, who's currently 3.1 seconds down on where he needs to be. I do wonder, does he have a little bit of wing damage? Let's see if he's struggling a little bit with the turn-in. It's hard to say, really, if I'm being honest. Doesn't really appear to be, but he's using up a lot of ERS considering where he's at the moment, you'd have to say. But anyone making any moves? Well, there is a move going on. Out front, it's between Ralphie and Man's Not Bob. Man's Not Bob got the inside line for turn 4, but in the end is outpaced down the straight by the Williams driver of Ralphie. Ralphie, though, off the track, which is going to allow then Man's Not Bob a better run up the hill. Man's Not Bob on the outside. Can he get the move done then there in the wet? Yes, he can. Up into turn 6. Gets the move done. And that is Man's Not Bob up into the race lead then here in ERL tonight. So Man's Not Bob up into first place, followed by Ralphie in 2nd, followed by then Neil in 3rd, Appledorm 4th, though, but is catching right now, Neil, and really he's the next driver we want to keep an eye on because he's fighting obviously for a championship here to some degree, and 4th place would certainly help him out a lot. Didn't score points in the sprint, so of course, in terms of a sprint, therefore, he's going to lose out there. But in terms of points, for finishing 4th, would gain 20 points. So, would go into the next race with a 21-point deficit at the moment. No matter what happens tonight, there will be a bit of a deficit. At minimum, the deficit could be, well, 11 points for Appledorm at minimum, and for Charlie Harris the minimum could be 10 points. However, of course, they will want to score a bit more than what they're scoring at the moment, maybe to try and reduce that, well, down towards the minimum as close as possible. Because 20-point advantage for Dandan going into the final round is pretty healthy either way, irrespective whether he loses points here or not. Even a 10-point gap. I think last season, what was it last season there was? In fact, let me go see if we can check what the gap was going into the last round of the last season. In the end, it was, I think, the driver who won it last season. That is if still standings are there, of course. So going into the last race of last season, there was, so here is points gap. So in total, I think there was only a 4-point gap. That was literally it going into the final race of the last race of the season. 4 points, so very, very close. And then the gap back to Arbeigduri was, of course, about a 13-point gap. So it was a very, very close gap. But, yeah, in the end, Appledorm could not overturn or overcome that 5-point Sorry, 5-point deficit, 4-point deficit. So that was the situation of last season. Of course, this season, well, a 20-point deficit. I mean, yeah, I don't know whether you could overcome that either. Be certainly a lot more tough. Be, well, what is it, 5 times the difficulty? I think, if I'm correct, if my maths is good, yeah, 5 times 4's 20. So yeah, 5 times the difficulty, effectively. And that's for both Charlie Harris and for Appledorn. So 5 times the difficulty it would be for both drivers then to overcome that points deficit, especially more so for Appledorn, you can say. But yeah, right now, Manzanar Bob has cleared off out into the distance. Nils managed to get himself up into then second place, and the track is actually drying out here. So we are going to see dry running then, and the track's drying out very nicely. In fact, I think it's definitely time to switch on to the dry slick tyre. If you haven't obviously switched on to them. And now Appledorn comes in, Manzanar Bob in, Ralphie also in. So all of them coming into the pits. Why can't I switch camera? I don't want to be in this camera. There we go. That's the camera I want. Anyway, so they're all coming in. Mufasa doing quite a nice race actually here. Compared to the last race, he was having a horrid time. Now, after this race restart, he's having a beautiful time. But does have to get them softs 10 laps, well, home, which is a fair distance to go on a set of softs. Also, I do wonder, has Appledorn come out on another set of inters? If he has, I mean, surely that's a championship gone. It is. So, unless he knows something I don't, and it's going to rain again in a matter of laps, I genuinely think, without being funny, but that's the championship over for Appledorn, unless we get a safety car here, unfortunately, because he is not going to make those work, I don't think. And, well, what is his gap? Could he make them tyres work even in the slightest to remain P9? So, his gap back to 9th is 8 seconds to Morgan. But as you can see, does come in again. And therefore, he's going to drop down the field. So, in he comes for softs. Puts on the softs. And away he goes. And back out into race, but down now into 12th. So that is Appledorn falling down the order. And Morgan going down the inside at turn 7. Turn 7, sorry. Turn 4. As he'll go up the hill into turn 6. Mufasa right now directly behind in 8th. So right now Charlie Harris manages therefore to keep the championship alive going into the last round. Right now Appledorn wouldn't be in a position to keep that championship alive, therefore he will miss out potentially. So for obviously Charlie Harris, currently in 10th, FCS and Shade does have a 5-second penalty ahead of him. Not sure if that potentially removable, might not be. So for Charlie, now this championship, well, he's in a position where he can keep the championship alive, but I feel like he needs to score more than 10th, really. Let me have a quick look at how many wins each of them have got. So right now, 3 wins this season for Dan, and then it is Charlie Harris, then with the 1 win. Also, the Alpine driver of Dan has got more podiums to his name, but obviously there is a fastest lap point there too, so actually it'd be only 11th he'd need to finish in the end, I think, which be a bit better, but yeah, by, well, 30 points would be the difference. So in the end would need to take the win and fastest lap plus hope for realistically Dan to be finishing either last, dead last, or to finish or not finish at all. So yeah, I mean, how likely is that? Effectively, Dan would be 1 point away from the driver's title going into the final round. Now, Neil has obviously overtaken the race leader, but is on the softest compound of tyre, so therefore his tyre will start falling off, I would suspect, in a very short while, and therefore that will allow Mans Not Bob to come back into the race and probably allow Mans Not Bob to reclaim the race lead. For Ralphie, though, he's taking, though, P2 for now, off Mans Not Bob, but is out of battery then. So down the second straight, down towards turn 4. Good opportunity for Bob to get back ahead, potentially. He's going to go down the inside at turn 4, takes the move, and takes the position 2, and is now up into P2 in the race overall. Ralphie is in third, though, as they will both shortly probably start to catch then Neil. But Neil does have a 1.8 second advantage, however, does have a penalty of the 5 seconds, which, well, he's going to definitely get added on to the end race time, unless he can find a way to get that 5 second removed. Not entirely sure. Quite a lot of them actually have 5 second penalties, so I do wonder whether it's a glitch or whether that is legitimately fair penalties there then. Anyway, we'll soon find out. This time, Ralphie not getting the pass done on the first straight, but therefore does have the opportunity on the second straight. But actually, to be fair, Mans Not Bob getting excellent drive out of that second straight, and therefore I think Mans Not Bob is going to be too far ahead by the time we get to the turn 4 braking zone. He is indeed, and that then sees Mans Not Bob remain ahead of Ralphie. How's the battle further back? Let's see. So right now, Lucky Egg is the driver who isn't holding them up. This is FCS and Shadu. Probably is a little bit of the issue here for then him. So right now, if Charlie Harris finishes in, well, 9th, he would pick up, obviously, because that's probably where he's going to finish this race. Let's see how many points he's then going to pick up out of today's event. He's going to pick up 11 points. So in total would therefore have a 29-point deficit then going into the final race of the season. So as I said, still very far back, but if he finishes this race in 7th, it's still a lot of points he's got to make up. It would be 26, but 26 does seem a little bit more realistic in terms of whether or not you can get the job done or not. Still very much would be firmly in the fate of Dan, but if Charlie Harris can capitalise off this fighting, which is exactly now about to take place in front of his very eyes as they go 3 into turn 4, is this going to end well? I'm not entirely sure, but if it does, then it could see either Morgan or Mufasa make up positions right now. Mufasa on the inside, Mufasa on the softer compound, hold it out. Now, does Morgan surrender the position to Charlie Harris? The answer to that is no, he does not. And therefore, Charlie Harris remains in 10th. But this fighting is certainly bringing a little bit of everyone into play right now for these positions. So Charlie Harris looking very close to the back of Morgan on this straight. Therefore, I reckon Charlie could see himself move up into 9th position. If he does get 9th, that's a very important position to take. And is he going to go straight for 8th? Yes, he is. But it is going to be Mufasa with the inside line, but both of them leave each other room. A little bit of contact between them as they go through, but it is going to be Morgan coming back down the straight as Morgan gets almost punted into the barriers. And Morgan then comes out in 9th, but Charlie Harris, more importantly, comes out of that in 8th position. Now, Lucky Egg, who is on a set of the softs, is about 5 seconds up the road. Actually, this race may turn into P6 for Charlie Harris, which, if it does, that would be a quite decent result actually. 16 points gained. So 24 points would be the deficit going into the final race. That'd be a very nice situation, I feel, for then him. But what's happened there, because Man's Not Bob off the track and Man's Not Bob has lost 2 positions in the process. He did have a comfortable 1 second advantage, I think it was. But now he's behind both Ralphie and Neil once more. Looks like his car's okay. Doesn't look like there's any damage. In terms of penalties, he doesn't have any of those. So with 2 laps to go, so long he keeps his head cool, it should be the race win going Man's Not Bob's way. I'm sure he would love to win it on the track though, because ultimately if he can get the win on the track, this would be far better than doing it off the circuit. Ultimately. But Ralphie right now ahead, then it's Neil. Neil's doing very well to hang on in there on those soft tyres, but can Ralphie get now ahead of Neil on this lap into turn 1 is going to be the golden opportunity. Does he go for it? He's down the inside. Now it's going to be who gets the DRS. It is going to be then Ralphie getting the DRS, then plus it is going to be Man's Not Bob coming at them. Here's Man's Not Bob then into turn 4. Man's Not Bob got his car on the inside. Does Ralphie leave him in the room? Yes, he does. That's a very nice little battle going on there. Ralphie then, as they go up the hill, is ahead, but Man's Not Bob is just behind, and Man's Not Bob, without any time penalties, has got 1 more lap to get done, and then he will move on to his final lap of the race and potentially become your race winner today. So after 2 hours, Jesus, that's a long race, 1 hour and 45 minutes, then this race looks like it's heading towards its conclusion. And I'm sure, on behalf of the league, can only apologise for the game glitches, but let's see what happens in this final lap of race. Man's Not Bob coming under a bit of pressure from Neil. Neil, though, can't get the move done. But what about Man's Not Bob now? Can he go and get that move done to take the win? Not just in the steward's room or due to penalties, but can he get this race win on the circuit? Or is he going to be a bit too far back? He's going to go down the inside at turn 4. He certainly sent it. Is he going to keep the position, though? He's on the track. He's kept it within the track limits. So that's a yes. And Man's Not Bob up into the race lead, but with still half a lap to go, this race may not be over yet. We've seen races to the line between Alonso and Perez, so you can come back if you're close enough, but Man's Not Bob has decided to drop the sandbags as he rounds the final corner now. And he's going to take then the race win here. And it is going to be a race victory for Man's Not Bob in Brazil. Charlie Harris, Ralphie comes home P2, Neil P3. No, Ehrman takes third, then it's Neil, then it's Hasnagel, then it's Lucky Egg. SCS on Shade is going to come in 7th, but going to drop down to behind Charlie, who finishes eventually in 6th. Morgan, Lucky Egg 7th, Morgan 8th, then Appledorm 9th, and I think that will mean potentially, actually will it? No, I think, has Alpine been outscored enough by Mercedes? Because I think it's Mercedes probably the biggest threat. Oh, that's close, but I think I can confirm probably Alpine as the Constructors' Champions then today, if my maths is correct. It all depends what they scored also in the sprint race, actually. But I don't know. It's very, very close in that. But I think Alpine may have just done it. May have just. But other than that, Charlie Harris has managed to keep the championship alive. Unfortunately for Appledorm, his championship comes to its conclusive end then here. And for Appledorm, that's an unfortunate way because, well, who knows what the other race would have, well, the first race would have finished as. No one knows really, but it is Man's Not Bob taking the winning honours today. And Man's Not Bob, I'm sure, will be pleased to take the trophy, but it was that mistake in the pit stop which cost, obviously, Appledorm the race, potentially. And not just the race, obviously, his championship hopes. So, here is your final race result then. So, Man's Not Bob wins from Ralphie, then Ehrman in 3rd, then it's Neil 4th. Hasnagel is in 5th, then Charlie Harris 6th. 7th is Lucky Egg, Morgan in 8th, Appledorm 9th, it's saying. Hang on, what? Appledorm 9th? If Appledorm's 9th, then... Actually, sorry, my apologies. Appledorm has kept the championship alive, I think, then there. 11 points is all he needed, right? So yeah, he has kept the championship live. Just, very much just, is on the cusp, effectively, of not having it alive. So he is kept the championship alive. FCS and Shade is in then 10th, then it's Mufasa 11th, Brian in 12th, then Shipboys is a legend in 13th, Saint Power is 14th, and then 15th is Tom. So we will have a three-way fight going, I think, into the final race of the season. That went over my head, so sorry to Appledorm. You are in the championship fight come the final race, only just though. And same with Charlie Harris, it is outside shots. But who knows? All bets are off in that situation, I suppose. We have to wait and see. Anyway, until next week, I'm your commentator, F1ology, and see you all next week for hopefully what will be a very good championship finale. Until then, have a great week.